With Fox becoming the fourth official network upon its sign-on in 1986, a race for a potential fifth network quickly took form. The two competitors were Warner Brothers and Paramount, with their respective networks classifying themselves as the WB and UPN. From the announcement of the creation of both networks in 1993, all the way up until both of their closures in 2006, the WB and UPN were constantly battling it out. They both wanted to achieve the success that Fox had obtained just a few short years prior to both networks coming onto the scene. This special two-part episode of TV, Gone But Never Forgotten, will cover the rise and fall of both the WB and UPN. This first part will examine the network that launched first, the WB. Warner Brothers and Paramount announced their plans to create their own separate networks only 7 days apart. Paramount struck first on October 26, 1993. Warner Brothers was close behind, going public with their own news on November 2nd. The competition between the two networks had begun.
We're going to be very aggressively attacking the 18 to 49 demographic that ABC goes after and that Fox goes after, and our shows will just be different.
Almost 2 years later, on January 11, 1995, the WB officially hit the airwaves with their first show, The Wayans Brothers. The WB also unveiled their mascot, Michigan J. Frog, that same night. The frog would become an iconic staple of the WB, staying with the network in some form or the other until being discontinued in 2005. His silhouette would make a final appearance on September 17, 2006, on the night in which the WB would sign off forever. The WB premiered 4 shows on its opening night, the aforementioned Wayans Brothers, as well as The Parenthood, Unhappily Ever After, and Muscle. The network originally broadcasted only one night a week with a 2-hour comedy block on Wednesday nights. This strategy had worked for Fox when it launched 9 years earlier, and the WB had wanted to replicate that success. Only 3 out of the 4 sitcoms to air on the WB's first night of broadcasting would make it to the next season. Muscle was axed after only 13 episodes on the fledgling network. The other 3, along with Sister Sister, which had been acquired from ABC, would all see another season in the fall. The fall of 1995 saw the expansion of the WB's broadcast schedule to Sunday nights. Notable shows that aired on Sundays during the WB's first fall season were Kirk, a family sitcom starring Kirk Cameron, and Savannah. Savannah was notable for being the first drama to air on the then comedy-focused WB and proved to be quite popular during its first season. Wanting to compete with other popular children's programming blocks of the time, the WB launched its own on September 9, 1995. The first 4 shows to air on Kids WB were Animaniacs, which had been moved from Fox Kids, The Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries, Pinky and the Brain, and Freakazoid. Funnily enough, Kids WB outran the channel it aired on. The final appearance of Kids WB was on May 17, 2008, on the WB successor, the CW. The WB's second fall season would fare much better than its first. 2 new shows starring now household names Jamie Foxx and Steve Harvey would join the comedy lineup of Kirk, The Parenthood, Unhappily Ever After, and The Wayans Brothers. On Monday nights, Savannah, which had made the jump from Sunday nights, was joined by a newcomer, Seventh Heaven. Seventh Heaven would soon eclipse the popularity that Savannah had amassed during its first season. Seventh Heaven would go on to become the longest-running program to air on the WB. It even outlasted the WB, finding itself airing its 11th and final season in 2006 during the CW's first fall season. Speaking of Savannah, it was axed shortly after it finished its second season in February 1997. What replaced it would quickly become a global phenomenon.
One person in all the world dares to challenge it.
If she tries to stop you, kill her. This is a
Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Dawson's Creek, and Felicity would quickly become staples of the WB upon their premieres in 1997 and 1998 respectively. It was apparent that the WB had found their target audience, teenage girls. Buffy, in particular, drew in large numbers for the fledgling network, pulling in an impressive 4.8 million viewers on premiere night. Those numbers would continue to soar throughout its 5-season run on the WB. In fact, Season 3 boasted the highest ratings it had ever seen. The Season 3 premiere reached a total of 7.1 million viewers and an average of 5.3 million viewers for the entirety of that season. Needless to say, Buffy was a runaway success. However, something was about to change. The WB made a huge mistake 5 seasons into Buffy's run. Buffy was arguably the most popular show on the network at the time, but the WB let Buffy go to its biggest competitor, UPN, for the 2001-2002 season. Negotiations between the WB and 20th Century Fox Television, who had been producing Buffy, had grown hostile pretty quickly at the start of 2001. A very public war had begun between the two over licensing fees for Buffy. 20th Century Fox Television wanted to raise the price to $2 million an episode, but the WB wanted to keep things where they were at almost $1 million an episode. The WB believed that more money would be made in syndication and spin-offs. And so, even after the WB offered $1.8 million per episode, executives at 20th Century Fox Television struck a deal with UPN to carry Buffy for 2 more seasons at a price of $2.33 million per episode. Buffy had officially moved to networks. The WB had lost one of its biggest shows. Even worse, Buffy's spin-off, Angel, still had 1 more season left in its contract for the WB. The shows had been separated. Before the WB lost Buffy, more teen dramas began to pop up season after season. The first of which, Dawson's Creek, made a big splash when it premiered on January 20th, 1998. Even before it aired, controversy over the more adult themes featured in the show had spread like wildfire. One red flag for concerned parents was a storyline revolving around one of the main characters, Pacey, who, at 15, had been having an affair with his teacher. Another red flag was the use of vulgar language. Neither issue could stop Dawson's Creek from becoming a major success for the WB. Nearly half of all teenagers watching television in the 9 p.m. time slot had tuned into Dawson's Creek on premiere night. The WB had another hit on their hands. Felicity got off to a good start when it premiered on September 29, 1998. It didn't necessarily have the best ratings out of the WB's lineup during its 4-season run, but the show was praised for the performance of the lead actress, Kerry Russell. Russell won a Golden Globe for Felicity only 4 months into its run. Her performance as Felicity Porter couldn't stop the ratings from dropping from season 2 onwards, however. It also didn't help that it had been moved from Tuesday to Sunday nights. Either way, Felicity would only have 4 seasons, compared to other WB shows of the time. Charmed, on the other hand, was an immediate success. 7.7 million viewers tuned into its premiere on October 7, 1998. These ratings would be consistent throughout all 8 seasons, with the lowest numbers occurring in its final season. Like Buffy before it, Charmed was centered around the supernatural, with the 3 leads being witches themselves. Charmed made history when it debuted, becoming the first primetime show to revolve around a coven of witches. Charmed was so popular that 2 reboots were planned. The first was unsuccessful. It didn't even make it onto screen. The second, however, had a bit more luck behind it and is still airing as of this video. When thinking of the WB's most iconic shows, Gilmore Girls usually resides at the top of that list. Many factors played into its success. The mother-daughter dynamic of Lorelai and Rory Gilmore, quick-witted dialogue, and an expert blend of comedy and drama all contributed to the cultural phenomenon known as Gilmore Girls. Upon its premiere in 2000, Gilmore Girls received almost nothing but positive reviews. It was clear that the WB had another smash hit on their hands. The WB had another strong year of programming in 2001. Smallville, an origin story of sorts for the classic DC Comics hero Superman, would see 8.4 million viewers when it premiered on October 17, 2001. It ran for a whopping 10 seasons, concluding on May 13, 2011. Reba, on the other hand, was quite possibly the most successful sitcom to air on the WB. It consistently brought in good ratings for the WB during its 6-season run, moving to the CW for its 7th and final season. Notable shows that the WB premiered in 2002 included Everwood and What I Like About You. Everwood proved to be an acceptable companion to Seventh Heaven, airing after the ever-so-popular drama, though it couldn't pull in the same ratings it could have if it had aired separately. Everwood was a casualty of the 2006 WB-UPN merger, being canceled a few short weeks before airing its 4th season finale. What I Like About You didn't have the best ratings during its 4-season run on the WB, but it did manage to become a staple on the Friday night comedy block. It concluded in March 2006 before the merger. By 2005, the only notable shows to premiere on the WB were Beauty and the Geek, One Tree Hill, and Supernatural. It was clear that the WB was struggling to create memorable shows, ones that stuck with and resonated with viewers. Comedies, dramas, and just about every other genre of TV show that the WB put out in the last 3 years of its operation rarely lasted more than a season. The WB, who had performed decently in the ratings for the majority of its time on air, was now trailing its competitor, UPN. Even worse, the WB decided to kill off its iconic mascot, Michigan J. Frog, in July 2005. The WB was at death's doorstep. The question was, when would it be taken out of its misery? That question would be answered on January 24th, 2006. In a not-so-surprising turn of events, Warner Brothers and CBS announced that the WB and UPN would be merged into one unified network, the CW. Shows from the WB that would move over to the new network included Seventh Heaven, Beauty and the Geek, Gilmore Girls, One Tree Hill, Reba, Smallville, and Supernatural. Exactly 15 years to the day, on September 17, 2006, the WB quietly signed off with The Night of Favorites and Farewells, a bittersweet tribute to its most popular programs. The pilot episodes from Felicity, Angel, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Dawson's Creek were shown, followed by a touching moment of Michigan J. Frog's silhouette taking a bow with the words "Thank you" appearing alongside it. And so, the Fifth Network had finally hit the airwaves. After 11 years of battle, the WB and UPN both conceded, being laid to rest quietly. Their child, the CW, would fare somewhat better, staying on air to this day. How did the WB manage to fade into obscurity? After all, many memorable shows came from the network. It was easily recognizable thanks to the iconic frog imagery that debuted alongside the network. Then unknown actors were thrust into stardom because of the WB. Many of its signature hits have grown in popularity by the advent of streaming services, and even before that, reruns on traditional cable television. The WB deserves to get some recognition in that sense. However, the network was not without its faults. Many factors contributed to the WB's downfall, including the loss of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the lack of popular new series after 2002, and the rise of cable. If the WB had adapted to the changes that had come during its lifespan and fought to keep the shows that had made a household name out of the network, perhaps it could have found its place as the rightful fifth network, dethroning UPN altogether. The WB had the capability to be so much more, but, unfortunately, that just wasn't the case for the Frog Network. The charm that the WB had possessed all the way back in 1995 had worn off long since then by its shutdown in 2006. That doesn't mean that the WB's legacy hasn't lived on since 2006. In fact, after Supernatural made the jump from the WB to the CW, it ran for a whopping 14 more seasons, concluding at the end of 2020. The lasting success of Supernatural should be something that makes former associates, executives, viewers, and everyone else involved with the WB proud of. Thanks for watching this episode of TV, Gone But Never Forgotten. The next entry in the series will cover the second half of the battle for the Fifth Network. That's right, we're talking UPN next time on M-Story.